Oh, hey,
That's
Ryan.
why we shouldn't. Yeah, we're live. What are you? Okay, so here we are. We're -1, but he's going to join us shortly. My name's Ryan Kovar. This is Audra Streetman. We're missing our lovely Mick Baccio, who will be here very shortly. We were just on a webinar, State of Security 2022. Check out that replay if you want our spicy hot takes that are carefully moderated by marketing. We are here on Coffee Talk with Serge, where we're going to go over the last basically month. This is the first time we've been back, and Mick,
You made it.
You made it.
I don't know what happened. Love Restream. Do not love my logins. All right, it was complicated.
So we are here, Coffee Talk with Serge. The gang is back from the desert, from COVID, from wild adventures, from certifications. We're going to do about 20 to 30 minutes, give or take, depending on how spicy we're feeling and how much energy we have. And we're going to start with news. Then we're going to go into some exciting things Splunk Security is up for. We're going to do a 60-second charity challenge, and then a deep dive today of a DEFCON roll-up. So this should be pretty awesome. I'm excited. Audra,
I'm jazzed.
Coffee Talk. What's happened for the last couple months? What's interesting? Bring us a hot
take. It's been pretty quiet, you know, the usual. Actually not. There's been quite a bit of news since we've had our coffee talk. I believe the last time we were all together was in June. So instead of covering all the news since then, I decided to pick the most recent stories, right? So yeah, more recent. So just yesterday, I think it was, Signal, the end-to-end encrypted messaging app, they posted on Twitter that they had 1,900 users' phone numbers that were exposed in the Twilio breach. So this was a breach. Twilio provides phone number verification for Signal. But Signal clarified that with these phone numbers, they were exposed along with some SMS verification codes for about 2,000 users. But with Signal, since it's end-to-end encrypted, an attacker wouldn't be able to access any of the message history because Signal doesn't store it. Your contact list through the app is protected by a PIN. So really the only thing an attacker could do in this situation is re-register your account. But Signal also has a step that you can take to prevent this. They have a registration lock, which is under account settings, which you can enable to prevent your account from being re-registered on another device. You'd have to use your PIN in order to do that. So there is a fix for this. And, you know, I think it goes to show that Signal, you know, was ahead of the game on this. They had something in place ahead of time to prevent this. So.
Yeah, let's chat about it. Let's coffee talk on this a bit. Mick, yes. You say this is a success story. Why?
I am a huge Signal fan. I am a huge Signal supporter. I think this is fantastic. Yeah, I'm sure that the Twilio breach, it's kind of crappy that happened. But Signal game plan for this already, like their threat modeling included this as an attack vector. And I think that's fantastic. You know, when we talk about threat modeling all the time, and this attack fell into a bucket that Signal had already game planned for. The registration lock was in place before the attack. So if you had that in place, this would not have affected you. I think it's sad that it happened, but I'm viewing this as a success just because that's something that on the back end, we talk about secure development all the time. This is something that I think should be defaulted.
It crushed it. Yeah, I think it was wonderful. You know, if there's one thing I learned at DEF CON this year is the only people who use Signal are criminals, hackers, InfoSec
and
professionals, and reporters. And JAG, yeah, Juan Andres Guillermo. So it really hit our community hard. I am kind of curious how much is actually, like, I know cyber people are going to care about this, but, you know, does anyone else notice? But to be determined, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, I've asked friends. Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah. I think there's a lot of non-cyber folks that use Signal, right? Or use encrypted messaging.
Yes, and there was a big discussion about that when the war in Ukraine started, right? About encrypted comms.
Right, because everyone like kind of dunked on Telegram.
Yeah, but I have asked friends, you know, hey, do you mind downloading this app? Like, we could text on there instead, you know, just to try to, you know, raise awareness that it exists. And most of my friends are like, nah, I'm good.
Well, we talked about this
really
earlier, Nick, because your family is from Thailand and they have their own. I use WhatsApp extensively for friends and family outside the cyber community, and there's some interesting things. We'll talk a little bit about that later on today, but like you have the similar issue, right, with third-party apps that are more popular in other countries.
Right, and Thailand, Line is a very big thing, and some folks use WeChat, and I just don't talk to them anymore. But yeah, it's everything has their threat model, but even with those variations in security and everything else, something like registration lock is a fantastic thing for all of the encrypted messaging apps to use by default. But I'm curious though, as I think your friend circle, your social circle is probably the least cyber focused out of all of us. So you said like a percentage is like, I'm good, Audra, thank you. Just take my iMessage or we won't talk.
I guess I'm not convincing enough. I try to say, I try to explain what end-to-end encryption is and why it's, good to have. And it's one of those things, sometimes when you talk to people that aren't in this industry, they're like, oh, I have nothing to hide. I don't care if people see my data. That's the mindset, but it's not really about what you have to hide. It's more so what you want to protect, and that's how I frame it to people is, it's good to be aware of this because, you never know when you might prefer to have end-to-end encryption when you talk to someone. So it's I think it's worth it. But anyway, let's move on to the next story. This one is about the FTC. They announced just last week that they're exploring some new data security and privacy rules. So the agency hasn't really clarified what these rules would be. They're still exploring how they might regulate like corporate data practices. So this could be how consumer consent, right? Like consent to your data being taken and possibly sold, or how it could be used with discrimination or affecting children, were all mentioned in the agency's announcement. The FTC chair actually cited the growing digitization of the US economy and how businesses actually have a financial incentive now to gather potentially sensitive data about customers or employees. So again, it's unclear how this might roll out, but the FTC, they are holding a public comment period for feedback about this, and they're going to have a virtual public forum next month. So I am interested to see what happens there.
I find something that's really came out at Black Hat and DEFCON for me, like as we talk about the biases that I have, is like cybersecurity is nation focused. And then there's this island of privacy where that Venn diagram overlap kind of hits on. And it's becoming more and more of a Venn diagram circle, I think, around the privacy side. And it's interesting to see how this is going to impact, there's side notes here, right? Like we go to save the children, makes perfect sense. But then the output of this is then we lose telemetry for cybersecurity from something, possibly, like depending on how far this goes.
I understand this is a sort of big deal because, hey, we're going to talk about things, but we're going to talk about stuff we're not sure what we're going to talk about, but like understand that we're going to talk. And that's what I took from this. We don't have any guidelines we're going to put out. We just want you to be aware that we're aware that this is a thing we need to talk about, and we're talking about it.
So a meeting for a meeting?
Right. Well, just to let you know that we're aware.
It's good to get the conversation started, right? Because a lot of people maybe don't know where their data ends up, especially with data brokers, right? There are so many data brokers, like hundreds of data brokers that are.
Right. I think like no matter what data security and privacy rules the FTC puts in place, data brokers will apparently ignore those.
Well, how do the data brokers get it, right? Are there companies that are selling it to data brokers, right? That's a question that maybe might come of this. So.
Yeah, there's an interesting thing in a world I used to live in, but we never bought data. We leased data, which was a very interesting change, right? And like doesn't seem to happen as much. You remember like 6 years ago, you'd go somewhere and they'd say, hey, would you sign up for this? We don't sell your data. And I was like, do you lease it? And they said, I make. We like
don't sell your data.
Yeah, I make $11 an hour here. Just do you want your latte or not? Fair enough.
Right. Well, it's really difficult to try to take control of your own data if you care about it.
Yeah, this is something you've gone through, right, Audra? You've done a lot.
Yeah, the more I learn about it, the more concerning it is, right? And there are actually services out there that you can pay to try to delete your data for you, because it's such a huge task to try to take on yourself. It's nearly impossible to try. Do they
target anyone who might be affected by an OPM breach and lost all their classified data,
or a USPS breach, like Just if you fall in that bucket, will it help you
And
out?
Yes.
it's over for you.
Do they have
Too late.
tactical teams? I'm just asking for a friend if they go into Hong Kong or Macau. Like, do they have any?
Yeah, it's really the principle of it, though, right? Because you could argue like, oh, it's how much does it really affect you? But it is, I think, the principle of where we're going with data collection, right?
I mean, I remember when you applied for a job on Surge, and I did my normal, like, I'm going to Google someone to make sure, and it's like, well, she's on the news. Yep. Okay. She's definitely on the news.
It is.
Oh, she's a
concerning when you Google
hologram.
yourself
Okay.
and you see your address and your phone number, and you're just like,
No, I mean, in
"Oh,
Texas, my wife and I got married here, and in order to prevent bigamy, they publish the date you're married. Like, you can find that very easily, which is an interesting, kind of ties into data security and privacy. Like, they publish it so that people who are getting married can make sure that their partner is not already married. But
Right.
that does have the side effect of information I would never normally reveal. But everyone in the state of Texas, there you go. It's all public knowledge. I mean, someone could get that data and ransom it, which I think is a great segue, Audra, to our ransomware discussion for the day, for the week,
Yes,
for the hour.
ransomware roundup. So this was a story that I think came out last week. All the days are a blur, especially with Black Hat and DEFCON. I don't know what day this happened, but the U.S. State Department, they're offering $10 million as a reward for information about the identification of an alleged Conti member of the ransom. So this is a tweet here up on top where they have this video with very ominous music, kind of saying, watch out for this guy. He's apparently allegedly ransoming companies. And so the image of the guy, you can see it there. He has like a hat with like flaps on. So in the tweet,
He's probably wearing Crocs.
I don't really know what this hat is. I can't really make it out, but they joked in the tweet. They said to the guy in the photo, imagine how many cool hats you could buy with $10 million. So they say he goes by the name Target. And you might remember back in May, the State Department actually offered a $10 million award for information about Conti after they ransomed the government of Costa Rica, which was not very good for Costa Rica in terms of paying taxes and keeping things up and running. So it's interesting now that we're putting a face to this group, which I don't think we've seen that before.
We've seen the sophistication, right? Like Mick and I in our world, Mick, especially when you followed China more specifically in the government, like we would see FBI top 10 with like faces, right?
Holding babies in pictures. Yeah, it's just.
Yeah, I mean, they weren't shy of the camera.
Right. But yeah, I think it's amazing, and it goes to show how, I guess, seriously ransomware is being viewed by the State Department, by the authorities, and just what a problem it poses, internationally. $10 million is a lot of hats, or at least like 3 or 4 sneakers for me. So I might get on my private jet and go look for folks. I'm curious what's going to happen from this, right? We've all seen the FBI list before. It's just you can't come to the States in your name, blah, blah, blah. But this is $10 million. Like, is there going to be, some like a Meal Team 6 type, this mechanical keyboard going over? And
I resemble that comment. It's, you had a comment a couple of weeks ago, Mick, and you're so good at these, but it's not ransomware anymore. It's really like we need to look at this crime as a service, right?
Yeah, it's cybercrime as a service. Big
question for the group. What PR firm is ransomware as a crime using? And second, can BEC, business email compromise, hire them? Because as bad as ransomware is, I think BEC blows them like 4x in losses away or something like that. It's crazy.
Well, I think BEC shies away from ransomware and leans into it. Ransomware affiliates I've seen recently, the Costa Rica thing was a big deal. I've seen ransomware affiliates that have .com websites now, and that's amazing. Like, as always, you hid behind the .onion because you were afraid of some kind of law enforcement, and I think just the brazenness is increasing. So I'll be curious what happens, some kind of digital Old West shootout, I guess.
Yeah, well, I did see a story, I think it was on Dark Reading, about some of the data exfiltrated in ransomware attacks are being used for BEC attacks, right? Like they're using this to try to follow up with the second attack. So it is something that's happening.
Well, we're seeing this conflation, right? Like ransomware is no longer the only thing that a ransomware operator is doing. They're also doing
Exactly.
the double blind, the extortion. So that is causing those sort of problems of we're not only doing ransomware, but we're taking your data and extorting it.
But in addition to that, I now offer all these additional ancillary services. If you would like intellectual property, if you would like credentials, it's a whole economy that's growing. So, I think given time, maybe cybercrime as a service will catch up to BEC. You're just going to have goals. You're going to have goals.
I'm rooting for him. I'm just absolutely rooting for him. It's I
hope
they all have the opportunity to get on the top 10 most wanted and be persecuted to the fullest extent of criminal justice.
And I think that is really what any criminal shoots for.
Oh, I would love to hear a ransomware joke, Audra.
This is from Amy at Splunk, who works at Splunk, and she wrote in the comments. So don't look. Do you know how the threat actor evaded capture? He ran somewhere.
She is the queen of puns. Yes, she would give David Bianco a run for her dad joke, mom joke, person joke, parental joke.
That pun has got me locked up. It's just
for a bit.
All right. Shall we move on now to our upcoming event?
What do we have coming up here, Audra?
So as you mentioned at the top, we had the State of Security webinar, which I think I have a link to that, so I can share that in the comment section if anyone wants to go back and watch.
I think we have some people who just came from that, so if you liked it in the chat, feel free. Yeah,
well, if you want to watch
if you didn't like it, please send your feedback to null@spiunk.com.
Yeah, so that was, I didn't have a chance to watch because I was getting ready for this, but I will go back and watch that and see how that went with you guys. Also, September 13th, so actually just around the corner, Josh Cowling at Splunk, I believe he's a security architect. He is presenting at the SANS Cyber Threat Summit in London, and this is exciting. I believe he's going to talk about TLS signatures using data science methods to analyze those. So that'll be a really interesting talk that I'm looking forward to. And then also coming soon, we're going to have a blog from Surge member Johan is writing a blog right now about interactive ransomware content that we've worked with CERT New Zealand to help produce. And I'm really excited to see that released as well. So
that is exciting stuff. Now, we always do a bit of a charity challenge here. So before we find out what that is, why don't we have our lovely new producers roll clip on the charity challenge. And now, Splunk's Cybersecurity 60-second charity challenge. Remember the rules. You've got to get through an entire subject in 60 seconds, or you donate to today's charity of choice. Good luck.
All right, so today I wanted to first talk about another news story to set this up. So Facebook recently announced that it's actually testing a default end-to-end encryption service for the Messenger app, right? So, and it's also going to come with secure storage to back up those messages. So the company says it plans to roll this out globally next year. They're testing it out now. So this means the only people who can view private conversations are the sender and receiver accounts. So that not only prevents, attacks like man-in-the-middle type attacks, it also could hinder investigators from accessing private chat history, which is a big component of Facebook and, OSINT in terms of, criminal investigations. So that's, been a big topic lately as well surrounding the issue of abortion. And, Facebook, they actually already offer end-to-end encryption for secret chats, but not everyone might be aware of that or interested enough to opt into it. So making this kind of the default for Facebook so that all conversations are end-to-end encrypted, it looks to be the way that they're going. So my question for you for the 60-second charity challenge is, why is having encrypted comms important? So what's the benefit? How does it work?
So I'm going to start here by saying, usually Mick and I spend an hour a piece coming up with a really tightly crafted 60-second quippy, witty thing. So this is your first time watching. I'm gonna throw out here. I did not have a chance to do this, although I have a talk tack ready. But because I'm Mick's boss, I'm going to say, Mick, I think you should go first.
Okay.
And let's whenever
I had as much preparation time as you, but sure, let's wing it. Let's see what happens.
Exactly. Lucky, whenever you have a second, roll clip. Mick, when you see it, hit it.
Important, right?
Whoops. Hold on. Now.
All right. So let's start here. Between you and the internet is at least one other person. I'm going to be real clear on that. Between you and the internet is at least one other person. Now, how much they can see varies on what app you're using, what platform you're on, or anything else. When you start looking at your messages, you start talking about things like actual content of the message and the metadata of the message. Now, if you use someone else's service, you're going to have metadata collected on you. The person you talk to, their number, the duration, not the content. The content is the message itself, and that's where encryption comes in. As long as you use the internet, you are subject to metadata being collected by at least one other person. But the encryption, the message itself, that's what's important. That's why end-to-end encryption should be rolled into everything you do, no matter the app, the account, the service. End-to-end encryption is paramount. Thanks, everyone. Boom.
Oh man, this is bad. No way I'm beating that. This is just going to be embarrassing. That's what I'm seeing.
I can't hear you.
It's all right. It's probably telling you wonderful things. Lucky, I'm ready. Whenever you have Sans, run script. Let's see what happens. Okay, so here's my thoughts on this subject. When you write something on the internet, as Mick said, if you write an email, I don't think a lot of people realize that every bit of your email, for the most part, is traveling across the internet completely unencrypted. No one is seeing this. And in fact, there's a lot of ways to get that data, and it's bouncing back and forth. When people first started sending text messages, it was the same sort of thing. And that content was available. Now we have all this encrypted work that people are actually able to encrypt the content, just like what Mick said around the back end. But what I hear a lot, what I see people talking about that they're not necessarily knowing, is that even if it's not encrypted today, or even if you don't care today, it could be used against you tomorrow, as certain people in legislative organizations find out later on. So the nice thing about the encrypted messages is that they're not going to be seen today, they're not going to be seen tomorrow, and just because no one cares about you today does not mean things will not change around you or the world in the coming future. So encrypt your text, encrypt all the things, because you don't know when you're going to be subpoenaed.
Great way to end that. Thank you for both of those amazing explanations.
All right, so Audra, I'm not going to ask you to pick here.
Oh, okay.
But we have a new production team today, and I'm going to make them feel very awkward. Lucky, first-time listener, long-time not listener, just voice shot overview. Who do you think won? It's okay.
No
Were you
pressure.
paying attention? I don't think he was paying attention.
He's here. He's off of mute. Drum roll. Lucky, thoughts? Okay. Well, I think you heard it here. His audio probably for everyone
Or
else.
in my case, 100% chance of getting it wrong.
Wait, was that you, Lucky? Did I hear it? Did I hear it?
Mick won. Mick's the best.
That's all right. Audra, who won this time?
I'm going to go with Mick, because I do like it is important for people to know about metadata, because that is not encrypted. And a lot of people might confuse that if they're not familiar with that process.
You're not wrong.
But I also appreciate your message, Ryan, about normalcy bias. Just because something's a certain way today doesn't mean it's going to be that way tomorrow. And it's good to, you know.
I'm used to being let down, Audra. I get it. Compliment sandwich there. Who are we?
Well, hey, it's okay because things change, and maybe in the future someone will like you. Is that what we're gonna get?
I think that's what she was implying. Audra, who are we? Who am I donating to today?
Okay, so our charity today is going to be, I lost it, the Hunger Project, and this is a global nonprofit that is committed to the sustainable end of world hunger. So that is the charity that we are donating to this week.
All right, so I'm doing it as we talk. Yeah, Mick hates the Hunger Project. That's why he won.
I hate hungry people. I hate food.
That escalated quickly.
That's what we do here. Audra, what do we have left? What are we're going to do a deep dive today, right?
We couldn't end this without talking about Black Hat and DEFCON, because I want to know how it went. This is really my first time talking to you guys for a bit since you were away, and I was
since you weren't there to babysit us. That's what you're saying. Yeah,
I wasn't there. I had a definite fear of missing out all week. I saw some of the tweets about what happened, but what was it like from your guys' point of view?
So I think this is super interesting because Audra, you weren't there, so your perspective is a virtual one. Ryan, you were, and I was there as well, but I'm a goon, so it's a different frame.
Yeah.
For me, DEFCON, Black Hat's Black Hat. You know, I thought Chris Krebs talk, he was amazing. If you had a chance, look it up. I thought Kim's was fantastic. Kim Zetters was fantastic. The big takeaway for me, other than the Blue Team Village panel, I'll let Ryan talk about that. At DEFCON 30, 75% of the speakers were first-time speakers. And
Wow.
that is an amazing statistic to me.
And I still couldn't make the cut.
I didn't know that. That's amazing.
Next time, Ryan, you can have Village Talk, which is almost as good.
We did. We spent some time talking about Black Hat, and one thing that we quickly saw was there were only about 5 or 6 or 7 talks that I was super interested in seeing that were Blue Team focused, and they were mostly around election security and Ukraine, Russia, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So I thought that was an interesting. If you've never been to Black Hat, if you've never been to DEF CON, they are different. Black Hat is obviously the more business aspect. DEF CON is more of the hot take. I don't think it's a security conference anymore. I think it's basically a hacker / security festival. But like the talks there at DEF CON proper were much more around red team and hacking. And then you have the wonderful villages. Mick, you have so much background about this. What's kind of the big difference there?
The villages in DEF CON?
Yeah.
So DEF CON is your hacker tracks, right? Your main stage talks. Where the villages are growing exponentially each year. It's like there's a new one that pops up. We go back to, we talked about in our webinar earlier today, specialization in cyber, right? I was talking to some of the goons, and I'm a Blue Team guy. Blue Team's my background, so I'm going to go hang out in Blue Team Village. But if you are an offensive type, you'll go hang out in Red Team Village. AppSec Village is super popular. Cloud security. There's a village for every specific aperture in the security field that most folks can hang out in, and that's what makes the experience fantastic.
I agree. In fact, and if Lucky can bring up the image here, one of the biggest things I was happy about was there was a phenomenal panel that you ran, Mick, and let me sit in because I'm your boss, as you made clear, at the Blue Team Village, and it was a little bit different. Tell us about the folks who were on it and what we kind of had a takeaway from.
Sure. So on that panel, it was Cher DeGrepo from Proofpoint, Jamie Williams from MITRE, Ashley Bench from Cisco Talos, and then Sean Thompson from Yahoo came over, and it was just a fantastic discussion on, threat hunting at scale. When something happens like Log4Shell, like Ukraine, here at Splunk, we have our internal response process. We have to kind of deal with this, but we also communicate a lot of information externally, as do all these groups. So we talk about the thresholds for that, the importance of how to build out those teams, and it was just in a unique perspective. And the big thing for me, the takeaway from the panel that I enjoyed most was the back and forth between you and Sherrod on the phrase business value analysis, because in all my time at DEF CON, I don't think I've heard that phrase before.
It was fascinating. And Lucky, you can bring the image off now. The panel, the villages, the Blue Team side was great. Audra, first time to DEF CON last year. Did you have much time to go to the villages when you were there? I
did.
think you went to the lock-picking one, right?
I made it to... there was one about they had a Tesla trying to break into the Tesla or hack the Tesla. There was Hack a Sat. Those weren't individual villages. Those are in the same one. I went to Blue Team Village. I went to the voting village. I might be getting the names wrong. It was a year
Close
ago.
enough.
But yeah, I did wander around, and I saw a lot of really cool stuff going on. So, and I did see a lot of really interesting stories. I know Kim Zetter, the journalist who is amazing, covering cybersecurity, was one of the keynotes. And she gave a really interesting talk about Colonial Pipeline. And, hindsight is 2020, but at the same time, should we have been more prepared for this, right? And I think that was a really interesting point of view on that, especially with her work on Stuxnet and, cyber attacks targeting critical infrastructure. So that was one highlight just from me observing from afar.
One of the things I was super into, and Mick and I actually separately had an attachment to this, was the Policy Village. So a good friend of mine, Rebecca Brown, spoke on the Policy Village on the first day in kind of what sounded like a roundtable discussion that was open. Like if you wanted to come see some policy nerds jam out, you could have just walked in and learned more about policy in 5 minutes than you've ever learned before. And then Mick, you also had a person, your friend.
Yeah, Liz, Bryce, the whole gang over there. And Policy Village, this was the first year for Policy Village. And the only problem I had with it was that I wish it would have been given a space more in the front where you were forced to walk by.
I'm sorry, can I stop you, Mick? Front of what? The Flamingo?
That's fair. That's fair. Yeah.
Forum shops. Caesar.
You got your steps in. You got your steps in.
Oh, I got
but Policy Village at DEF CON to me kind of signified the we're grown up now, right? This is all the cool nerd things we do will not matter if we don't have the policy at a federal level behind it. And to see more and more of the brains kind of come together and just jam out on policy, I thought it was fantastic to see. And I hope it gets bigger every year.
So we are at 30 minutes. We're going to start a new thing here where we always donate, but we had some people say, hey, do you guys ever really donate? So I'm going to go ahead and bring this over. Here's $60 matched by Splunk to the Hunger Project. So now you know we did it. So it's real. We are going to be back to normal broadcasting every 2 weeks with Coffee Talk with Serge, LinkedIn Live, but we are going to start doing a lot more every other weeks, very special editions, interviews, documentaries, on the street footage, roasting mix. It's going to be great. It's going to be phenomenal.
That's what we're here for.
Find us in 2 weeks. Check out the webinar that Mick and I just did, because a lot of people seem to have joined over and had some fun time with that. Audra, so glad to see you. Mick, I hope you didn't bring anything back unexpected from Black Hat or DEF CON.
I'm staying positive,
You're staying positive, doing what you can. My name is Ryan Kovar. This is Coffee Talk with Serge. And if our lovely producers can take us away while we stare awkwardly at the stream because we still haven't figured out an ending outro, we can do that. Tuesdays. We're going to figure this out someday. We're going to go ahead and get that any minute now. We'll just go ahead.
Need an outro song.